What if the reason you're always behind on money isn't because you're irresponsible, lazy, or bad with finances? What if it's not because you don't budget hard enough, hustle enough, or want it badly enough? What if the real reason you never feel caught up financially is something much deeper and much more uncomfortable than personal failure? Think about it for a moment. You work. You earn. You pay your bills. And yet somehow, no matter how hard you try, it always feels like you're one step behind. One unexpected expense away from stress. One bill away from anxiety. One emergency away from panic. If that sounds familiar, you're not broken. You're not alone. And you're not imagining it. This feeling, this constant sense of being behind, is becoming normal. And that should terrify all of us. Most people don't remember the moment they fell behind. It wasn't dramatic. There was no big collapse. It usually starts with something small. A credit card used for groceries because prices went up again. A swipe for gas because payday was still a few days away. A balance carried, just for this month, and then another month. And another. Until being behind becomes your baseline. Credit cards don't feel dangerous in the moment. They feel helpful. They feel like relief. They feel like a solution. And that's exactly the problem. They don't scream, trap. They whisper, you'll be okay. But here's the truth most people never hear clearly: credit cards don't just help you stay afloat. They quietly keep you behind. When you use a credit card, you're borrowing from your future. You're spending money you haven't earned yet, and agreeing to pay extra for the privilege. And in a world where wages struggle to keep up with inflation, that future money is already spoken for. So when the bill comes due, you're not catching up. You're digging out. And the hole gets deeper because of interest. Credit card interest rates today are among the highest they've been in decades. Many cards now carry interest rates above 20%, some creeping toward 30%. That means if you carry a balance, a significant portion of your payment doesn't reduce what you owe at all. It simply pays the bank for letting you stay behind. This is where the frustration really begins. You make payments every month. You try to be responsible. But the balance barely moves. Or worse, it grows. That's not because you're failing. It's because the system is designed that way. Minimum payments are not designed to help you get ahead. They're designed to keep you stuck just long enough to be profitable. Paying the minimum keeps your account in good standing while maximizing interest. You feel like you're doing the right thing, but financially, you're running in place. And while this is happening, life doesn't stop. Rent goes up. Groceries cost more. Gas spikes overnight. Insurance premiums rise quietly. Medical bills appear unexpectedly. These aren't luxury expenses. These are survival expenses. And when income doesn't rise at the same pace, something has to give. That's when people turn back to credit cards. This is how the cycle forms. Not from recklessness, but from pressure. Recent economic data shows that household debt continues to rise even as people cut back on discretionary spending. That tells us something important. People aren't overspending on vacations and luxury items. They're spending on basics. Food. Housing. Transportation. Healthcare. The cost of simply existing has gone up, and credit cards have become the bridge between what people earn and what life demands. But that bridge charges tolls. Heavy ones. Another reason people feel permanently behind is psychological. Credit cards disconnect spending from reality. When you pay with cash, you feel the loss. When you swipe a card, your brain doesn't register the same pain. Studies have shown people spend more when using credit than when using cash, not because they're careless, but because the transaction doesn't feel real. That lack of friction makes it easier to say yes in the moment, and harder to recover later. Then there's the credit score. We're told that using credit cards responsibly builds credit. And while that's technically true, it comes with a hidden cost. One late payment can drop your score dramatically. A high balance can hurt you even if you've never missed a payment. And a lower score means higher interest rates, more expensive loans, and fewer options. So not only are you behind, you're penalized for being behind. And the stress that comes with all of this is enormous. Money stress is one of the leading causes of anxiety, relationship conflict, and sleep problems. People lie awake at night replaying numbers in their heads. They avoid checking their accounts. They feel shame for struggling, even though millions of others are in the exact same position. The system thrives on that silence. When people don't talk about money, they blame themselves. They think everyone else has it figured out. They assume they're the problem. But the truth is far more uncomfortable. The system is structured so that being behind is common. And once you're behind, getting ahead feels impossible. This is why advice like, just budget better, often falls flat. You can't budget your way out of rising costs and stagnant wages. You can't hustle your way out of structural pressure forever. And you certainly can't shame yourself into financial peace. Being behind isn't a mindset problem. It's a math problem. And until the math changes, the feeling remains. But here's the most important part of this conversation. Understanding this isn't about giving up. It's about clarity. When you see why you're behind, you stop internalizing the blame. You stop thinking you're broken. And that alone is powerful. Because awareness is the first step toward control. If this is resonating with you so far, stay with me, because the next part of this conversation is where everything starts to shift. Hook for mid-video retention. If you've ever wondered why no matter how much you earn, it never feels like enough, the answer isn't what you've been told. Being behind on money isn't a personal failure. It's a shared experience in a system that quietly normalizes financial stress. And the more we talk about it honestly, the less power it has over us. If this video is putting words to something you've felt but never knew how to explain, you're not alone. And you're not weak. You're living inside a system that profits when people feel exactly the way you do. And that's why this conversation matters. If you've stayed with me this far, you already know this isn't just about bad habits or poor discipline. It's about a cycle that's incredibly easy to fall into, and brutally hard to escape once you're inside it. Being behind on money doesn't usually start with overspending. It starts with pressure. Pressure from rising rent. Pressure from groceries that somehow cost more every single month. Pressure from utilities, insurance, gas, medical bills, and everything else that quietly eats away at your paycheck. Most people don't splurge their way into financial stress. They survive their way into it. And when survival gets expensive, credit cards become the pressure valve. That's why so many people say things like, I'll just use it this once, or I'll pay it off next month, or I don't have a choice right now. And in that moment, they're right. It doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like relief. It feels like solving the problem. But what credit cards really do is move the problem forward in time, while making it bigger. Because next month, that balance comes due. And next month, your paycheck is already spoken for. Rent, utilities, food, transportation. The same costs that forced you to use the card in the first place. So you make the minimum payment. Or maybe a little more if you can. And then life happens again. This is how people get stuck paying yesterday's bills with today's income while borrowing against tomorrow. And it's exhausting. One of the most frustrating parts of being behind on money is that it feels like you're constantly working just to maintain the same level of stress. You're not improving, but you're not collapsing either. You're just stuck. Floating. Treading water. Always tired. Always tense. That constant state of financial tension changes the way you think. You stop planning long term. You stop dreaming. You stop asking, what do I want my life to look like? And start asking, what bill can wait? Or, which payment is least urgent? That mental shift is subtle, but powerful. When survival becomes the priority, progress disappears. And this isn't happening to a small group of people. It's widespread. Recent reports and economic data show that a growing percentage of households couldn't cover a modest emergency without borrowing money. Not because they don't want to save, but because there's nothing left to save. Wages haven't kept up with the cost of living, and the gap is being filled with debt. That gap is where people fall behind. Another layer of this problem is how unpredictable life has become financially. One medical issue. One car repair. One reduction in hours. One layoff. One rent increase. And suddenly everything unravels. The margin for error is razor thin. And when there's no margin, stress becomes constant. This is why being behind feels permanent. Because the system doesn't leave room to recover. And while all of this is happening, there's another force quietly working against you: normalization. Debt has been normalized. Stress has been normalized. Living paycheck to paycheck has been normalized. Being behind has been reframed as just how life is now. And when something becomes normal, people stop questioning it. They stop asking why. But here's the question most people never get a chance to ask honestly: if working full-time still leaves you behind, what does that say about the system? It's not just about income. It's about timing. When bills come due. When interest compounds. When emergencies hit. Credit cards step into that timing mismatch and charge you for it. And once you're behind, the penalties multiply. Interest eats into your progress. Late fees add pressure. Credit scores take hits. And suddenly, borrowing becomes more expensive, not less. The very thing that was supposed to help you now makes it harder to recover. That's not accidental. That's structural. And the emotional weight of this can't be overstated. Financial stress changes how people show up in their lives. It affects relationships. It creates tension in households. It fuels arguments. It causes shame. People feel embarrassed for struggling, even when the struggle makes perfect sense. They compare themselves to others who seem to be doing better, without realizing those people may also be drowning quietly. Because nobody posts their credit card balance online. And this is where the silence becomes dangerous. When people don't talk about money, they internalize the blame. They think they're bad with finances. They think everyone else has it figured out. They think they're failing at adulthood. But the truth is, many people are surviving on borrowed time and borrowed money. And if you've made it this far, here's something important to hear: feeling behind doesn't mean you're behind as a person. It means you're living inside a system that makes staying ahead incredibly difficult. And once you understand that, the story starts to change. If you've ever wondered why earning more doesn't automatically make life easier, the answer is closer than you think. One of the hardest truths to accept about money is this: the game most people are playing isn't designed for them to win. We're told that if we work hard, stay disciplined, and make smart choices, everything will eventually fall into place. But what happens when you do all of that, and still feel behind? What happens when the rules keep changing, but the expectations stay the same? Being behind on money isn't just about numbers. It's about power. When you're financially stretched, your choices shrink. You can't take risks. You can't say no easily. You can't walk away from bad situations. You stay in jobs longer than you want to. You tolerate stress because you have to. You postpone rest because survival comes first. That's not freedom. That's constraint. And credit cards play a huge role in maintaining that constraint. They give just enough relief to keep things moving, but not enough to change your situation. They keep you functional, not free. That's why the feeling of being behind never goes away. Because the tools offered to help are often the same tools that maintain the cycle. Another uncomfortable truth is that financial education is often missing exactly where it's needed most. Many people are never taught how interest truly works, how debt compounds, or how systems profit from long-term balances. Instead, they're told to be responsible, without being shown the full picture. So when things go wrong, they blame themselves. But responsibility without transparency is manipulation. And here's where things start to shift. The moment you realize that being behind isn't a personal defect, but a predictable outcome, you regain something powerful: clarity. You stop chasing shame. You stop internalizing stress. You start asking better questions. Why is everything more expensive? Why does borrowing cost so much? Why does staying afloat feel like a full-time job? Why does progress feel so slow? Those questions matter. Because awareness doesn't magically fix everything, but it changes how you move forward. It changes how you view money. It changes how you treat yourself. And it changes how much power the system has over your mindset. People who begin to regain control financially often say the same thing: the biggest shift wasn't their income, it was their understanding. Once they saw the cycle clearly, they stopped blaming themselves and started making intentional decisions, even small ones. And small changes compound, just like interest does. This doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy. It means it becomes honest. It means you stop expecting credit cards to save you. You stop believing that being behind is a moral failure. You stop measuring your worth by your balance. And that mental shift is where real progress begins. If you've stayed with me this long, you're not just watching a video. You're confronting something real. Something heavy. Something many people feel but rarely name. And that matters. Because the more we talk about why people are always behind on money, the harder it becomes to pretend this is an individual problem. It's not. It's a shared experience in a system that quietly depends on financial stress. And silence is what keeps it going. If this video helped you understand your situation in a new way, please take a moment to like it so this message reaches more people who feel stuck but don't know why. Share it with someone who's always stressed about money but never talks about it. Leave a comment with your experience. Your story could help someone else feel less alone. And subscribe for more honest conversations about money, life, and the systems that shape both. Because the more we talk about this, the less power it has over us.